Thank you, John. I'm going to practice some of those repetition, repetition, repetition. Maybe next time I do this, I won't need note cards. Our next speaker is an English teacher at Denfeld High School and a Duluth speech team speech coach. She also has a love of theater and has directed over 30 plays and musicals in her 31 years at Denfeld High School. She will be the first to admit that she loves to talk, and I will be the first one to agree with her. With her story, You Can Never Not Communicate, please welcome Jill Lofald.
Put my gloves over. Is it okay? Okay. Did she really say that I love to talk? Well, Tammy calls and says, you know, would you do this? Would you do this? And when you're a speech coach and a theater person like John, I mean, I think sometimes we'd like to say no, but we know that our career is somewhat wrapped around that activity. And so I said, okay. And then I started to think about what it is we have learned. And when she said that I have been at Denfeld for 31 years, you know then that I have learned a lot. What I've learned, how I've learned it, what has made an impact on my life. Well, at this one, this was my idea about talking about mistakes that we made. Because I think all of us will admit that sometimes our best learning comes from mistakes. But then I thought somebody else would use that. Then I'd get up here and then I'd sound repetitive, and so that wasn't a good idea. And then I think this one was really the one I shared with Tammy last week, and this is on taking a risk. Because I know that the times that I've learned the most about things is when I've stepped out of my comfort zone and into my courage zone and taken a risk. But I got about 2 minutes into that speech, and even I got bored. So then I thought, well, that's not a good one. So and then this one was the one about perfectionism. Oh, I'm not going to say anything about that. And then I think this one was on winging it. I've done that in my lifetime, and I think this is the one I shared with my husband, that, you know, when I was in my 11th grade public speaking class in high school, boy, I don't like to run into that teacher. Wow. I thought that, you know, because people told me I talked a lot, so it's been a lifelong attribute of mine, but I took a public speaking class, and I didn't think that I had to, like, prepare because I talked a lot, but I found out that winging it was not good. And I think all of us that are going to share our stories tonight are also well aware that winging it, whether you're a classroom or a speaker or in front of our whole ISD 709, you can't do that either. So that wasn't a good idea. So this was the one left. And this is kind of funny. This is the one right here. This is the one that was my original idea. That was my original idea. And at first, I just thought, wow, there's got to be something better. But again, sometimes I've learned too that it's best to go with that first gut reaction, that first idea that you have. And the more you keep fretting about it and worrying about it, the less you'll get done. And sometimes I know that that has been the seed of some of procrastination as well. But again, as I thought about the topic, I've had a passion, a lifelong affair with communication. And so I thought I would just share some things that have been a part of my life and a part of my journey, and we can talk about communication. And Tammy already revealed, and honestly, this is in my little manuscript if you want to look at my manuscript, but Tammy already mentioned to you that I love to talk. And this was kind of funny because one of my 9th grade students about 15 years ago, in just a moment of conversation in our classroom, says to me, Mrs. Lofald, you know something? I said, what? He said, you like to talk a lot. And there was some awkward silence from the class, and then some giggles, And then they were all waiting to see what I was going to say. And when I said to him, "You're right. You're right. I do like to talk a lot. And there's some good things about doing that. And you're right, there's probably, some negative things about that. But thanks a lot for sharing that with me." And one of the things I learned from that experience is that, one, we can learn a lot from anyone, whether they're 6 years old or 60 years old, and that how we handle maybe what we would see as a criticism, in actuality, how we handle that, determines, a lot of how we communicate with others. And I know that once the students saw that I didn't send them to the disciplinary room, once I didn't get angry, once that I validated his observation, well, it just really turned our whole classroom atmosphere into one of safety and warm and belonging, because how we accept criticism and how we treat others when they say something that's constructive is a big way of how we can communicate. And I don't think we always know that there's always a message in everything we do in communication. Do you know that 93% of our communication is done non-verbally? But before I go into that topic, so because I talk a lot, I've asked my friend Joe Shingen to do a little timing, because we all have stories to share, we all have interesting things, and I don't want to take up anybody's time. So he's just going to give me a little thumbs up when it is a 10-minute card. But 93% of our communication is done non-verbally. And I know many of us in the audience probably have seen that statistic and know that percentage. But do we often take a look at it on a regular basis and reevaluate? I think that nonverbals kind of get less attention. And I just think you should all gasp at that. Why don't we share that information with our students, with our colleagues, with our businesses? If 93% of our communication is done nonverbally, that means tonight you're going to learn from all of us, but what you're going to remember is either the smiles on our faces, the tones in our voices, our gestures, and I kind of do a lot of them. I kind of talk with my hands. And we're not going to really remember a lot of our words, but we are going to walk away with feelings that we probably have gained from our nonverbal communication. So in my classroom, I love to share. I don't care if it's my drama classroom, my English 9 classroom, my public speaking or interpersonal classroom. One of the first things I always do in the beginning of a semester in a new learning is to teach a nonverbal unit. Because I believe that the atmosphere in our classrooms, the atmosphere here tonight, is all kind of set up by our nonverbals, by our eye contact, our facial expression, the tone in our voices. It's all done non-verbally, but yet we don't give a whole lot of attention to that lesson and how we learn it and then how it impacts our lives. And in my classroom, when I am able to share that information with my students, I think it changes the environment. And we have an atmosphere of inclusion and respect, and it's all done with smiles and eye contact and spatial. Even how we arrange our classrooms or we arrange our offices are all a connection to nonverbal. When I was a parent and my son would come in and I'd make him go in and apologize to his sister for the rude thing he just did, and he marches in there and he looks at Keely and he says, "I'm sorry." And then he comes back and I'm looking at him, I'm saying, "Go back in there and apologize to your sister." "I did." "No, you didn't. Because the tone in your voice and the way that you said it was more communicative." So it's really our actions do speak louder than our words. And that's been a lesson that I've learned that has impacted me and has made me understand people and watch people and always look at their stories too. I think nonverbals can also lead to maybe some stereotypes and some disrespect. So if we understand all that we communicate, it would be a great thing. The next communication lesson is that old childhood kind of rhyme that we've probably all been taught, and that is that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Remember that one? Well, there is some truth to that, but the older I get and the more I spend my passion around communication, the more that I want to remind all of us that our words are really powerful. And that even though I don't want, I think we have a choice of whether we take our words and take the words of others and have to live that or accept that. We don't have to do that, especially if the words are hurtful or labeling. We have the ability to not take on those words. But yet I do think that words are powerful, and that we don't often pay as much attention as to every word we say, that the words we choose on a day in and day out basis are powerful. There's no better example than just yesterday morning on Morning Joe, as I'm watching, and the news clip is about Hillary Clinton and Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City. And they were at a dinner for inner circle invitees, and they do a satire where they use a word that isn't always understood, and they were using it as satire. They were meaning it to be a joke. They even had a member of the Hamilton musical cast on the stage as a way to kind of make it seem funny. But it fell flat in our society because that word choice was seen as disrespectful. So I think the power of our words, we can either use words to build up or to tear down. We can use words to make people feel like they belong and are included, or we use words to exclude. We can use words that reveal things about us, make us approachable, friendly, or we can use words that conceal and hide who we really are. But the power of words is just incredibly important. And sometimes the lesson that I want to share, or the lesson I want to impact my life, is that I'm afraid that we are losing the respect that words and conversation and communication have. I love the emphasis on STEM and science and math and technology, but I fear that the generation that is younger than I am, is going to lose the art of conversation, because all they're really going to do is text or tweet or be on social media, and that whole skill of conversation is going to be lost. So the value of words and the well-chosen words cannot be devalued, and I will stay passionate about sharing those messages about the importance of words and every word that we say. And I know that my talk tonight, communication, sounds hard. It is. Just because we talk doesn't mean that we're effective communicators. And so I know that communication can be messy, and it can be hard, and it takes risk, and it's fearful at times. But I've spent my career trying to encourage our students to share their voice so that they can be heard. And so I want to also just remind you too that Joe's given me the hand signals here, that life, like an automobile, is driven from the inside out. And so yes, we can know that we have nonverbal understanding. I've shared with you that I think I have a passion for making sure that our words are chosen right. But if our heart isn't right, if our communication is forced, if it's not sincere, so then the bottom line for you can never not communicate is that you have to love yourself. We have to teach our friends and our children and our colleagues and our students how to love themselves. Because if you don't have, that's the foundation. And that even is where John was going in his acting and his connecting with emotions. But if you're not loving yourself, warts and all, good points and bad points, strengths and weaknesses, you can't find your worth in your achievements or your accomplishments. I tell my students they're more than their GPA. They're more than their class rank. They're more than their test score. They're much, much more than the state medalist. That they are somebody's son or daughter, somebody's brother or sister, somebody's aunt, somebody's best friend, somebody's babysitter, somebody's tutor. And that they have to love themselves, and they have to find acceptance in themselves. Because what's going to happen is if you don't love yourself first, then everything that comes out of your mouth, especially at times of stress and great frustration, sometimes words come out of your mouth that you never intended. So you have to love yourself first. And then I believe that you become what you practice most. So be careful what we practice. Communication is a passion of mine. It has been an incredible career for me. I have learned, I have made mistakes, I have grown, I have forgiven, I have great passion for people that are willing to get up here and give speeches as well. And I just would like to close with something that I share with students on the last day of school. And that's that Mother Teresa quote that I think has so much of a message to say. People are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people will accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are honest, people might try to cheat you. Be honest anyway. And if you find happiness, people will be jealous of you. Be happy anyway. The good that you do today may be forgotten tomorrow, but do good anyway. Give the world the best you've got. It may never be enough, but give the world your best. Because in the end, it was always between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. I've enjoyed being here tonight, and I can't wait to hear everybody else. Thank you.